I never believed heartbreak could be physical, until I felt my chest cave in as I watched the man I loved betray me in the most unforgivable way. It was supposed to be a surprise. I had left work early that Friday evening, clutching 2 printed plane tickets to Aspen. A romantic getaway to rekindle what I thought we were losing to stress and routine. We had been together for 6 years. 6 long, committed, sometimes painful years. I believed in building from the ground up, in sticking it out during hard times, and in loving someone even when the love feels bruised. That's what I thought we were doing, building. Marcus was my dream man, or at least I convinced myself he was. He was charming, passionate, and knew exactly what to say when I was down. People envied us. We had that picture-perfect kind of love that looked flawless on social media. Behind the smiles, though, I was slowly fading. We had moved in with his mother a year ago to save money for our future. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital, while Marcus was working on his startup. Weeks turned into months, and his ambition became excuses. I carried the weight of us while he floated through life with optimism and charm. But I never stopped believing in him. I defended him. I prayed for him. I told my friends he just needed time when deep down I was already exhausted. That evening, the skies opened up as I drove home. Heavy rain pounded the windshield, the wipers working overtime, barely keeping up. My heart beat a little faster as I imagined surprising him. I even smiled, thinking of the look on his face when he saw the tickets. But when I turned into the driveway and saw a red convertible parked next to his mother's SUV, something twisted in my stomach. I didn't recognize the car. A sharp chill crawled down my spine. It wasn't a full-blown panic at first, just a flicker of discomfort. Maybe it was a cousin. Maybe a friend. But that flicker grew into something heavier when I walked up the steps and noticed the front door was unlocked. Marcus always locked the door. Always. I stepped inside quietly. The house was too quiet. No TV, no music, just the distant hum of a ceiling fan upstairs. Then the scent hit me, vanilla candles. My favorite. Candles I hadn't lit. Candles that now felt like a mockery. I climbed the stairs like I was wading through wet cement, each step heavier than the last. My ears were ringing, but even through the pounding in my chest I heard it. Laughter. A soft, high-pitched giggle. Then a deep groan that I could never unhear. I stood outside the bedroom door holding my breath. Hoping, praying I was wrong. That my heart was playing cruel tricks on me. That this wasn't real. But it was. I opened the door slowly. There, tangled in the sheets of our shared bed, was Marcus. And a woman I had never seen before. Her legs wrapped around him, her manicured nails digging into his back, her head thrown back in pleasure. And Marcus? He was lost in her. Completely, utterly without shame. He didn't see me at first. Neither of them did. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't cry. I just stood there. It was like the air had been sucked from my lungs, leaving me hollow. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't believe. When Marcus finally looked up and saw me, he froze. His mouth opened, but no words came. The girl scrambled to cover herself, looking more annoyed than apologetic. But I didn't focus on her. I looked at him, at the man who once promised me forever. I wanted to ask him why. But I knew the answer wouldn't matter. My mind flashed back to all the times I defended him. All the late nights he came home exhausted. All the moments I felt him slipping away and ignored the signs. I had loved this man with everything I had. I bent for him. Broke for him. I had poured my heart into building a future for us. And he had shattered it in one night of selfish pleasure. But it wasn't just the cheating. It was the ease of it. Comfort. The way he had clearly done this before. The way he had lit those candles in my scent in our room for her. Something inside me cracked. Not like glass breaking, but like a dam bursting. I didn't make a scene. I didn't slap him. I didn't ask questions. I walked out of the room, down the stairs, and into the rain, letting it soak me until I couldn't tell the difference between the storm outside and the one inside me. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my childhood bed, back at my parents' house, staring at the wall in silence. The tears didn't come immediately. Shock has a strange way of protecting us. But when they did, they came in waves. Angry, hot, gut-wrenching sobs that left me breathless. I cried for the years I lost. For the dreams that died. For the version of me that loved him more than she loved herself. But somewhere in the middle of that darkness something shifted. A new voice rose inside me. A quiet, burning whisper. You are not finished. You're just beginning. And in that moment I knew I would never be that woman again. I couldn't sleep that night. Marcus's betrayal replayed over and over in my mind like a nightmare on repeat. But what hurt even more than the image of him tangled up with another woman was the fact that I didn't recognize her face. That unknown element gnawed at my gut like a sickness. She wasn't some stranger off the street. That much I felt in my bones. There was something about her posture, the familiarity in the way she laughed while wearing my man's shirt that told me this wasn't their first time. The next morning I did what broken women often do. I tried to convince myself not to look for answers. I told myself I didn't need to know who she was. That knowing wouldn't heal me. But that was a lie. I needed to know. I needed to see the face behind the betrayal. Because without the truth I'd never find peace. I pulled up Marcus's social media and began scrolling through his tagged photos. Most were harmless. A guy's night out, a birthday dinner, a few work events. But then I noticed something. A hand. Just a hand, placed gently on his shoulder in a photo where he was smiling a little too wide. The caption read, "Proud of you, babe. Always." It was from someone named Tessa Carter. The name didn't ring a bell right away, but when I clicked her profile, my world tilted. Tessa Carter had once been my best friend. Back in high school we were inseparable, until she moved away junior year after her mom got a job out of state. We lost touch like many teenage friendships do, and life carried us in different directions. But seeing her face now older, bolder, and wrapped in the arms of the man I loved, it made me sick. She had returned. And apparently without ever reaching out to me she found Marcus instead. I stared at the screen in stunned silence. My mind raced with questions. How had they met? Had she known he was with me all this time? Was it revenge? Jealousy? I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, a cold clarity settled over me. They weren't just betraying me. They were mocking me, hiding in plain sight, living their little secret life while I played the fool. I remembered every moment I thought Marcus was working late. Every last-minute cancellation. Every time he claimed he was exhausted or busy. I remembered how distant he'd grown. How uninterested he seemed in our plans, our future, our love. Now I understood why. He had already chosen her. I sat back, letting the bitterness coat my tongue like spoiled wine. I wasn't just heartbroken anymore. I was furious. They didn't just stab me in the back, they twisted the knife, smiled, and walked away. But they had underestimated me. They thought I'd crumble quietly. That I'd be too broken to fight back. That I'd let them ride off into the sunset while I faded into the background like a tragic footnote in their story. But I wasn't built to break. Not anymore. And as I stared at their pictures, him looking smug, her looking victorious, I made a silent vow. They were going to feel everything they made me feel. And when it was over, they'd wish they'd never crossed me. Revenge isn't always loud. It doesn't always come wrapped in chaos or screams or shattered plates. Sometimes it's quiet, measured, calculated. Sometimes it starts with a woman rising from the ashes Marcus and Tessa thought they buried her in. The first thing I did was disappear. Not in the literal sense. I still went to work. I still posted photos. I still smiled at people who asked how I was doing. But emotionally, mentally, I vanished from the version of me they both knew. I stopped calling Marcus. I didn't confront him. I didn't scream or beg or even ask for an explanation. Silence was my weapon and I wielded it like a blade. You see, Marcus had always been the kind of man who fed off control. He liked knowing what I was thinking, how I felt, where I was at all times. My silence was a vacuum and it rattled him. Within a week he started sending messages. "Hey, haven't heard from you. Everything okay?" Followed by, "Let's talk. I miss you." Miss me? The audacity nearly made me laugh. But I wasn't going to hand him the satisfaction of a meltdown. That's what people like him and Tessa expect. That's what gives them power. The idea that they've broken you so badly you can't function without them. Instead I focused on myself. I changed my hair. Not out of heartbreak but out of renewal. I started hitting the gym every morning before work. I reconnected with old friends. I joined a networking group for young entrepreneurs. Something I'd always wanted to do but never had the confidence to explore because Marcus made me feel small, like my dreams were hobbies, not real ambitions. Funny how betrayal can unlock the parts of you didn't know were caged. But while I rebuilt my world, I also studied theirs. Tessa had just gotten hired as a junior marketing executive at a luxury real estate firm. And Marcus? Well, his company was hosting a huge investor gala in a few weeks. One of those events where appearances matter and reputations are currency. The plan began forming slowly, piece by piece. I didn't want just payback, I wanted impact. I wanted the kind of revenge that would leave echoes. So I waited. I smiled. I worked. I became the version of myself that neither of them believed I could be without their validation. And while I did that, I dug deeper. Into Tessa's job. Into Marcus's finances. Into their social circle. And what I found was gold. Marcus had taken out a private loan using fake projections to impress a potential investor. A man I happened to meet through the entrepreneur group I joined. One conversation with him, over wine and business talk, was enough to plant a seed of doubt. Just a few subtle words. Have you verified Marcus's numbers? I've heard some things. That was all it took. The investor started asking questions. Pressing deeper. Suddenly Marcus wasn't so smug anymore. The cracks began to show. Meanwhile, Tessa was posting couple photos on Instagram with captions like, "Finally found the one." As if karma wasn't already circling like a hawk. And then came the night of the gala. The perfect stage. I wasn't invited, of course. But I didn't need an invitation. I had a friend on the inside, someone who owed me a favor, who slipped my name onto the guest list last minute. And when I walked into that grand ballroom in my backless red dress, heads turned. Including Marcus's. His jaw actually dropped. Tessa's smile faltered when she saw me. She clutched his arm tighter, like she could erase what she'd done by pretending to be proud of it. But I didn't flinch. I walked past them like they were strangers. Like their betrayal didn't weigh a thing. That was part of the plan. Make them doubt my silence. Make them wonder what I knew. What I was planning. And trust me, I wasn't done. Not even close. They say the best revenge is success. But I wanted more than that. I wanted them to feel it. The night of the gala was just the beginning. I didn't go there to confront them. No. I went to haunt them. To plant fear in Marcus's heart and guilt in Tessa's eyes. Because when you betray someone who loved you purely, the silence doesn't bring peace. It brings paranoia. And that's exactly what I wanted. Marcus couldn't stop staring at me all evening. I caught him watching me while I talked to investors, laughing effortlessly, sipping champagne with men he desperately wanted to impress. He kept checking his phone like he expected a text from me. Maybe an apology. Maybe a warning. But I didn't owe him either. The look on Tessa's face? It was a cocktail of jealousy, regret, and fear. She thought she'd taken my life, my man, and walked away unscathed. But standing in that room, watching me command attention while her smile faltered in comparison, she realized she hadn't taken anything. I'd given it up. And she couldn't wear it like I did. 2 days after the gala, the first domino fell. Remember that investor I'd quietly warned? He backed out of Marcus's deal. Just ghosted. No callbacks. No explanations. Marcus spiraled, started calling around, trying to patch up the damage. But word spreads fast in circles like that, especially when it's whispered in all the right ears. Meanwhile, I launched my first business pitch through the same entrepreneur network. A wellness and skincare line I had dreamed about for years but had shelved because Marcus once told me, "That's cute, but it won't make real money." Well, I raised my first round of funding in less than 2 weeks. The same week Marcus got slapped with a compliance audit for the shady projections he used to get his original loan. The whispers had turned into questions. And questions into investigations. The irony? He tried to call me. Twice. Left voicemails that sounded like desperate apologies coded in denial. "I know you're mad, babe. But we can talk. Let's fix this." Fix what? The fact that he paraded another woman around like I never existed? The fact that he destroyed a future we planned together for a fling with someone he swore was just a friend? We were far past fixing. Tessa too was unraveling. She posted less. Then she deleted a few of her engagement photos. Then I got a message, from one of her coworkers actually. Apparently she'd gotten a warning at work for slipping confidential client data into her personal portfolio. Something she'd done under Marcus's suggestion to boost their future brand. Problem was, the data breach violated her company's NDA, and someone had reported it anonymously. I wonder who. For the first time I saw them for who they really were. Not villains in some tragic love triangle. Just two insecure, reckless people who thought they could step on me and walk away without consequences. But I didn't want them destroyed. No. I wanted them to live long enough to see everything they thought they stole from me bloom right in front of them. And so I made sure they did. Every success I posted online was strategic. Every article about my startup was shared at the right moment. Every public event I attended, I showed up dressed like the future they never believed I had. Marcus watched from the sidelines, crumbling. Tessa faded into silence, shrinking. And I became the woman I was never allowed to be while loving a man who only loved control. But my story wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming every part of me they tried to erase. The most satisfying revenge doesn't come from confrontation. It comes in silence. When those who doubted you are forced to watch you rise from the ruins they left you in. By the time Marcus reached out, everything about my life had changed. I had built something real, something powerful. My name was being mentioned in rooms I once only dreamed of entering. The very business idea Marcus once ridiculed had grown into a brand that disrupted the market. I had made it without him, despite him. But still he called. He messaged. He begged to meet. At first I considered ignoring him. But then I realized something. I didn't need to yell or curse or cry to have the final word. My success already was the final word. All I had to do was let him witness it. So I agreed. I chose a rooftop lounge overlooking the skyline, an upscale venue with polished marble gold accents, and an air of success that smelled of imported whiskey and quiet power. It was the kind of place Marcus and I once said we'd visit, when we made it. But only one of us had made it, and it wasn't him. When I walked in, heads turned. I was dressed in white, symbolic, clean, radiant. Not the naive white of someone seeking purity, but the empowered kind worn by someone who had walked through fire and come out untouchable. I carried no bitterness on my face. Just grace, control, and calm. Marcus looked up as I approached. Time had not been kind to him. He looked older than his age, weighed down by regret and disappointment. His clothes, though designer, didn't sit on him with the same confidence they once did. There was a tiredness in his posture, like someone who finally realized the price of his choices. We exchanged no dramatic greetings. I didn't hug him or pretend to feel warmth. I simply sat and listened. And that was all I needed to do, listen. Marcus fumbled through apologies, justifications, and regrets. He mentioned how things had fallen apart with Tessa, that she turned out to be controlling, manipulative, even dishonest. He painted himself as a victim, someone caught in the middle of a storm he couldn't stop. But I knew better. He wasn't a victim. He was an architect of his own destruction. As he spoke, I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel pity. I just observed him the way you might watch a stranger tell a story that no longer concerns you. His words bounced off me, unable to penetrate the peace I had built within myself. A peace constructed not from forgetting but from healing. In that moment I realized the power I now held. Not over Marcus, but over myself. The girl who once needed his validation was gone. In her place stood a woman who no longer needed revenge to feel whole. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had survived what was meant to destroy her, and turned it into something extraordinary. I didn't offer him forgiveness. Not because I couldn't, but because he wasn't entitled to it just for showing up with regrets. Regret isn't redemption. And closure isn't owed, it's created. He asked for another chance, not just romantically but even as a friend, a confidant, someone with a place in my life. But there was no room left for him. Not in the version of my life I had rebuilt. His chapter had closed the moment he chose betrayal over loyalty. I left him with no dramatic exit, no bitter final words. Just a soft smile and a clear message. I had moved on. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. That was the most devastating consequence for him. Not my anger but my indifference. As I walked out of the rooftop lounge and into the warm night, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew he was still sitting there, staring at the ghost of what he threw away, haunted not by what he did, but by what I became without him. And that was enough. In the quiet that followed, I found something far more powerful than revenge. I found myself. For the first time in my life, I stopped shrinking to fit into places that were never meant for me. I stopped apologizing for my voice, my dreams, my strength. I stopped begging to be chosen. I chose myself, fully, loudly, unapologetically. And when I did, the world shifted. It wasn't a sudden explosion of success or some dramatic movie-like moment. It was slow, steady, sacred. Like planting a seed and finally watching it break through the soil after years of darkness. The tears I once shed in silence became the foundation of something solid. Something real. I poured everything into rebuilding, not just my career but my soul. I went back to therapy, surrounded myself with women who had known betrayal but still wore their scars like medals. I learned to love myself in ways I never thought possible. I built boundaries like fences, strong, protective, sacred. And with every new step forward, the past lost its grip on me. I no longer needed Marcus to hurt. I didn't wish for him to fail. I didn't care if Tessa regretted her games. That chapter had ended. And I had written a new one. One where I was the hero, not the victim. My life now. It's filled with peace. I wake up every morning in a home I bought on my own, brewed with warmth, filled with sunlight and silence that no longer feels empty. I run a business that empowers women to rise from betrayal and build empires from their pain. I mentor girls who remind me of the woman I once was. Fragile, overlooked, desperate to be seen. I look them in the eyes and say, you are already enough. You don't need to be chosen to be worthy. And sometimes when I sit on my balcony watching the city lights flicker like stars on earth, I think of the girl I used to be. The one who waited, hoped, and cried for a man who couldn't see her worth. I don't hate her. I honor her. Because she walked through the fire and didn't burn. She bent but didn't break. She loved, lost, and still found the strength to love herself. That woman, me, she's no longer broken. She's blooming. And as for Marcus, he became a footnote in the story of my rise. A reminder of what I overcame. Not someone I hate, just someone I outgrew. This is what healing looks like. Not loud, not vengeful, not perfect. But peaceful. Powerful. And if you're listening to this, if you've ever been betrayed, discarded, or underestimated, please hear me. You are not what they did to you. You are who you become in spite of it. Choose yourself. Again and again. And I promise, one day the silence will speak louder than your pain ever could. If this story touched a part of your soul, you're not alone. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because healing is contagious, and every story of rising inspires another.